Chik, and today I have a really fun surprise for you. On my channel we've done a lot of winter paintings, and to be honest, it's cold and wintry at my home right now, and so I'm kind of tired of the snow. So I wanted to paint something completely opposite, and I chose to paint a wave. And right here I have 4 different photos that I'm going to use as references. I just found them on Pinterest. And my plan is to do a horizontal landscape of the wave, and it will curl around this way, and then up here I want a gorgeous sky to contrast with the water. And so I'm going to list all the supplies that you will need to accomplish this. And I know that it's something that you can give away as a gift, or you can just enjoy in your home, which is what I plan to do. And so make sure you have all of your supplies ready, and let's get started. To speed up the process so that this doesn't take forever to do the tutorial, I went ahead and drew the formation of my wave. So I want you to keep a few things in mind. This is the sky here, and I wanted to do the top of the foam. So you're going to have a line right along here, and then I want you to draw a swoop right here, and then you're going to add additional swoops within, like this, so that it all comes up to this one gigantic curl. And then up here, I just loosely drew in the foam. But over here, this entire area, this will also be the spray and the foam for the wave, so this will be pretty intense, and you can see that I just squiggled some lines in there. Here are all the oil paints that I'm going to start out with for the painting, and I just wanted you to take note of the setup that I have here. So I have my Masterson art box, and you can take either wax paper or plastic used for painting. You know, when you paint and you put plastic down on your floor, you can use that as well. I just wrap it around a square or rectangle of mat board, and I tape it underneath, and I make sure it's really nice and firm. And then I have my palette knife, I have my paper towels, and I have my silicoil cleaning jar. And in that jar, I like to use my Terpenoid Natural. Well, this one's different. This is odorless Terpenoid, and it's a turpentine substitute. And I also use Terpenoid Natural, but I'm out of that, so I'm using this other. Of course, you want to use your liquid, and this is liquid for fine detail. And I just put that in a little cup, and I will just use it as needed. And so I'm going to take this and just dip it into each of my shades as I go. So have those things available. They will be very useful as you're working. Now to go over the colors, in order, these are the names. This is French Ultramarine Blue, Dioxizine Purple, Winsor Violet Dioxizine Purple, Winsor Blue Green Shade, Ultramarine Green Shade, Cobalt Blue, Cerulean Blue, Manganese Blue Hue, Turquoise, Pthalo Turquoise, Cobalt Teal, Permanent Green Light, Quinacridone Magenta, Cobalt Violet, Alizarin Crimson, Ivory Black, and of course, a lot of titanium white. We use the titanium white to mix a lot of the colors, and so you want to make sure you have plenty of that. So I buy the bigger tubes of the Ivory Black and the titanium white. Okay, now that you know what colors are what, I usually like to start with the first color mentioned, and that is the French Ultramarine Blue. We are going to create a variety of shades for the water. If you want it to look dimensional and have a lot of depth to it, we have to really, really get creative with the color mixing. So here's the French Ultramarine Blue. First, wipe your palette knife off. I want you to come over to the Cobalt Teal and mix that into the French Ultramarine Blue. And look how pretty those two look together. And what I love to do is I keep that main shade there, but then I'll wipe one to the side. I just swipe my palette knife, and then I'll take more white and I'll add it to that swatch. And then you get a completely different shade, but it's lighter. And see how easy that was? All I did was add titanium white. You can also use that light shade that's still on the palette knife, and this is how you get the most out of your oil paint, because oil paints are really expensive. And so you want to use every ounce of paint that you possibly can. Okay, now I'm going to go over to the permanent green light. I'm going to add it to that swatch and mix together. There is a lot of green in water. And of course you don't want it to be too green, and so if you want to add a little more blue, come over to the Cerulean Blue or the Cobalt Blue and just take a teeny tiny bit and add it into that. And that just adds some blue. And then same thing, wipe your palette knife off over here and add titanium white to get an even lighter shade. Okay, and this looks minty. It's a really light shade, and we will need that, so we're going to leave that alone. Come back over to the Cobalt Teal. I love this shade, it's really pretty. Okay, swipe that. Come over to the Cobalt Blue and mix that together. And you'll notice how every combination is slightly different. That's what you want to do. You want to make sure that you have multiple shades for your water, so you get the best out of your color. Okay, now that I've done those two, let's go back over to the French Ultramarine Blue and just add a teeny tiny bit. And then we're going to get really creative. Go to your Cobalt Violet, add some of that in there. Okay, now we have a really pretty dark shade, and then swipe it over here. We're going to get even darker. I want you to take Ivory Black, and then also go to your Pthalo Turquoise and Turquoise. Take both of those and mix those in. And that will give us a gorgeous, rich color for the shadows in the water. And then another thing you can do is swipe that over here and add more Alizarin Crimson. And then the Winsor Blue and the Ultramarine green shade, those colors are really pretty too. If you take both of those, you can add that in as well. Okay, now watch what happens when I take that shade and swipe it and then add white. And this white has a hint of the green in it, that's fine. You don't need to be too particular. And notice how it turns purple. Again, we will need this shade. Isn't that pretty? And then swipe that. And I want you to go to the Cobalt Blue and the Cerulean Blue and mix those together. Let's add more green, so come back over to your green, the permanent green light, and mix that. And then again, this is where the fun part is, you add the white to see what happens with that shade. So I swiped my palette knife, and then I'm taking my titanium white, and I'm mixing that in. And I just love to see what color comes out of that when you add the white. And see how you get that grayish green? It's really pretty. I want even a deeper turquoise, so let's take more of the Cobalt Teal. We're going to have to add more of that because really it's my favorite color in here. And then take your permanent green light and add a little bit of white, not very much, because we need a gorgeous aqua color. And see how pretty that is? And then swipe it over here. Come back over to your Cobalt Blue and use just a dab of that. Mix that together. And then swipe your palette knife. And I want you to know, as an artist, don't feel like you have to match every single color and paint swatch that I do. Honestly, when I'm working alone and I'm not teaching a tutorial, I just go to town and I use every color combination possible. And so really, I want to encourage you to do that. And so now, just to show you how much fun that is, watch what happens when I just pull different colors from wherever. And you can do the same thing. I want you to experiment. I want you to learn how to do that so that you're not completely dependent on me. Watch what happens as I just keep combining different shades, different colors, and it becomes really fun. It's an experimental process for you, as it is for me. But let's see how many different shades you can get on there, because honestly, with an ocean painting, you can't go wrong. So just have fun with it. I'm going to take purple and white and get some purple shades in there. And then in your shadows, you will have more red too. And so you want to get your Alizarin Crimson and the quinacridone magenta and use those as well. You want to have some reflection in there. And so if you have just a hint of red, it's good. And if you want a toned down version of that, just swipe your palette knife over here, add titanium white. You can add a hint of black. You can keep going. Anywhere that you don't have any paint, just fill it up. Just keep going. It's really fun. Okay, look at me. I'm just going to town now. I don't care what colors they are. I just want to create. So that's what I'm going to do, and I want you to do the same thing. Just watch how many different fun shades you get. This is what being a true artist is. It's not as fun when you have to listen to every little detail of an instructor. I mean, it's good to learn that way, but eventually you've got to put on your wings and fly and be on your own. And so I'm teaching you how to tap into that freedom. So we have some great colors to start with. So I'm going to take my Master's Touch 2-inch brush, and I want to use this in the far right corner of my painting to start the sky. And I'm going to be dipping into these shades. I have to direct my attention with my camera up onto the canvas. So just be aware that I'm going to be dipping into these, and then the clouds, we will be using some of these pinks right here. Watch how I use those colors up on the canvas. So at the very top of the sky, that's where the color will be the deepest. And so I want you to take that swatch that I showed you, the darker one, and just spread that paint back and forth. If you find that your paint is sticking too much, just take that liquid. You can dip your paintbrush into that cup and you'll get more consistency. See the difference? Makes it really nice and slippery. So you can do that as needed, or you can add more to your paint swatch. What I love about oil paints is that your colors blend beautifully together. And so after you've applied a color like that, you can get lighter and lighter. So I want you to go to the shade that's just slightly lighter than that one and paint underneath like this. Okay, now watch how they blend together. Isn't that pretty? Okay, and you can also do a crisscross pattern to help weave the two colors together. And then after I do that, then I take my brush and I stroke back and forth. Now that that's done, you don't have to necessarily wash off your brush. I would just go to that light pink color that we mixed. And even though there's a little bit of blue on your brush, that's okay. We want to start adding a few wispy clouds in there with that light color. Let's see, I'm just applying it here and there, and then I'll start blending. There's even a light blue that you can add next to that light pink that we mixed. You can do the two together. And then you can take one really long streak right along here. And anytime you run out of paint, just remix your colors. Don't feel like you can't do that. If you have to go back to the beginning of the tutorial on how to mix colors, you can. Just constantly have that paint available so that you don't run out of color. I'm already running out of pink, so I may have to mix more. Now that you've done that, we're going to take the blue, and I want you to take that first blue that we used up in here and just stroke a few lines in here, like that. You don't want too much. And then dip your brush in that liquid and we're going to smooth it all together, but we're going to be kind of choppy as we do it. We're doing that X pattern again. And see how the sky and the clouds are beginning to form? It's very loose, but you can see faintly those clouds that have formed up in the sky. Basically rocking back and forth with your brush in that X pattern the whole time. Come right over to the edge of the water. It's okay if it comes over that line. Okay, and I'm going to put that in time lapse as I finish that up, and watch and follow along. So I really like fan brushes also if you are wanting to blend. So if you want that softness in here, you don't want to see the brush strokes necessarily. And so if you take that fan brush and just go in there and gently fill in those areas that you can see the individual brush strokes, it's really helpful to have one of these. And then the other thing, if you got a gallery wrapped canvas like mine, you'll want to take the time to paint the sides as you go. It's really hard to go back after you've done your entire painting and then to have to do all the sides and mix up all the colors again. So take a moment to go in and just paint around those edges each time you do a section on the painting. Now you're going to take your brush and we want to paint in this corner over here, and go down and look at your palette and find the deep purple that we mixed. And let me show you what shade that is. See how pretty? So that's the color that we mixed, and you're going to go into this corner and start painting that, but it's only going to be the darkest in the corner, and then I want you to start fading out. So then you go back to the other blues that we were using, the lighter blues, and just take those colors and fade out from the purple. And what that will do is it will help to frame in the ocean foam from the wave. I also want you to get some of those aquamarine colors, so those bright turquoise and aquamarine colors, and just add some of that in here. Okay, we want to get some flavor. So let's build up our colors as much as possible. And then take white, so your titanium white, and I still have blue on my brush, which is good, you want that. And you're going to take that white and from the top just kind of come down like this. Just cut into that blank area on the canvas that's white right in here. Just cut into it. When this dries, we will be able to add white on top of it and get some texture. So we'll come back and finish that. But for now, take that fan brush again and do the X pattern just to blend everything together. You can do longer strokes too. Sometimes that's helpful. It does a better job. Now you're going to take that Master's Touch 1.5 inch brush, and with this one, we are going to do the white. So we want to start the white of the foam. And so notice how much paint I have on my brush. We want to be very heavy and textured up in here. Apply aggressively and use tons and tons of white. You can even take that corner and just use the very, very corner to stipple to get some of that texture. And you can have that fade into the blue that we've done. In fact, I really want you to do that. I want you to take and fade into that color. And don't just use that brush. I want you to get that fan brush again and just gently blend that, right as the white meets the blue. You can even take a smaller brush. I really like my Princeton Art and Brush Company paintbrush. This is a filbert, and I like how it's rounded, and this one's really helpful because I can go up to the top where the white meets the blue, and I can just soften those edges. You just want a really nice blended edge. You don't want to overblend, but just enough that it fades into that blue. You want to take your white and come over here as well. And we're not going to do as much white over here. You're just going to take your brush and do a few slashes in this area across, like that. Okay, we can even have it kind of go up in here a little bit to show some intensity and movement. And again, take that filbert brush. Just blend that in. Okay, and then take your fan brush. You just have to use all your brushes throughout. They all have a different purpose. Now continue with the white around this area because we want the blue and the white to blend together. And so we've got to do it while it's still wet. So now I'm going to take a lot of that titanium white and I'm going to start to add along here. It's okay to have heavy texture. And then take that filbert brush again. And I want you to pull that blue kind of down into the white. We're going to fade the edge all the way down. I'm going to get a really nice soft fade. We want to make sure that this color up in here still remains pristine, and so you might have to add a little more of that blue, which is not a big deal. You just take your paintbrush and apply that. But you want this color up here to really contrast. So we're just going to add that along where the white is on the foam. Then you can take a clean square paintbrush and just blend that in. Now for the fun part, I want you to take the bright turquoise green and we are going to apply some of that underneath here. And see the pretty contrast between the white and this color. It's so beautiful. And notice how I'm just doing gentle lines. I'm not pushing down hard with my brush. I'm just going in there lightly. And if you want a really strong contrast on the other side of that foam, you can take a blue, a deep blue, and on this side, just intensify that color. And then add some streaks of dark in there as well. Within these lighter spaces, I want you to take light mint color that we mixed and just go inside and fill that in. You can also do a light blue. I would do a combination of both just to have that variety in color. It makes it look so pretty. Again, the more color you use, the better. And they get kind of jagged on this edge. You don't want that white line to be perfectly straight. You want it to look natural. And then as it dries, we're going to add some texture. We'll do some stippling texture to do the white over that area of water. And then get some rich blue that we mixed, that really bright cerulean blue color, and the cobalt teal. And really begin to enhance this wave in here by adding that color. And you don't want to smooth things out too much. You do want a lot of texture because this is where the water is coming together to curl that wave. Use a lot of that cobalt teal. Then you could do a lighter shade here with that minty green and cobalt teal, like this. And then in between, if you get really dark, you'll have again that gorgeous contrast. And I'm telling you, if you have these areas of contrast from light to dark, it really does intensify that wave in making it super three-dimensional looking. So make sure you have that deep contrast. So dark against light. Okay, so if there's areas that are too light, just go back in with those darker shades that we mixed and you'll get that gorgeous effect. You can even come in here and add just some lines within. And we can add more later as it dries. See how pretty that is when you add that dark right against that cobalt teal and that minty green. Oh, I love it. And then we get lighter in between. So in here, you want to add the light shades. So the minty green, cobalt teal, light blue. And then I do want you to go in and soften. If you see any jagged lines that show the canvas texture, you can go in and soften those. Take that fan brush and use that to also soften. You can still leave the texture, the different lines, but if you go in and just work that color together to make it softer, it will really look like water. Don't overdo it. If you overdo it, you will not be happy. See how pretty that's beginning to look? And again, in order to add the white, we have to let all of this dry. But that white, it will add an extra level of intensity to this and it will be quite stunning. So I'm just adding a little more of that light blue in here. Don't forget to use your liquid. That's very helpful in painting water. See the difference? I dip my brush in it and immediately everything is more slick. Notice how I'm using that filbert brush quite a bit in this area. I like that it's rounded. I like that it turns with my hand, and it's really helping me to create the effect I want. Take dark blue and add some streaks of that in here to maintain that intensity. Get really dark right here. There's even a darker shade than that we mixed. Go ahead and take that filbert brush and just add a few streaks of that really, really dark shade. That will intensify it even more. And also add a little bit underneath. You want to add that underneath the foam. So blend one more time. Just take that fan brush, go in there, just gently blend those shades together. Very carefully, don't overdo it. We will add more layers as soon as it dries. So I'm going to give it a day and then come back and intensify it even more. You can take that fan brush too and kind of pull down some of that color. It's really important that you do get some of that softness in there. So I've allowed my painting to dry for a couple of days. I'm going to paint over this area in here just to brighten up some of those colors. And that's what I intentionally planned. When the surface dries that you've previously painted, then you can go back over with the brighter colors and not have it blend in with the surrounding colors. So it's brighter and more vivid. I'm going to take this light aqua color and I'm going to focus in on just this one little section in here where I'm going to do several little lines. And remember to use that liquid. That liquid gives it a really nice consistency so that you can spread the paint. If you go in and you just highlight those areas, notice how they're a little bit brighter. Now this shade is on the greener side, so make sure you use that swatch. I wanted to show you which colors I'm using. So in that section, I want you to use all of these lighter shades. So it's not just one color, you can take any one of these, and then I will also be adding in this beautiful purple color. As we do the shadows, then we'll start to pull in the darker colors. Now that you're familiar with which colors I'm using, notice how as I'm adding the highlights in here, it really makes that wave more transparent. Also, make sure that you blend really well. You don't want to see too much texture. We will add texture later, but as you're blending in these beautiful highlights, we want to avoid too much texture. Okay, here I'm using a light blue, and I think that's the lightest shade that I showed you on my palette. And if it gets grainy, again, just stick your brush in that liquid. Also, make sure that you're looking at your reference photos frequently so that you get an idea of where all the reflection is within the wave. And down below those highlights, you can get a little bit darker. So just have them blend into a darker shade. And that actually will help them to stand out even more. See how I'm just pulling a color that's maybe 2 shades darker than that one into the base of that stroke, that paint stroke, and see how beautifully that blends together. Makes it look a little more natural. You can also do it on the top and on the sides. You can also take white, and this is getting really bold, but you can take white and in just a small area right here in the center. I want you to highlight with the white. Okay, and again, don't overdo it. But the nice thing is where the paint is wet, it will blend in enough that it's not going to be too bold. Okay, but it just gives that extra sheen that we want with the water. You can also take some highlights and come up in here and add some right along here. That will help to brighten up that area as well. Remember, use that same technique where you take that darker shade and just right at the front or back of that paint stroke, you can apply that and blend it in. And then it just gives it a nice transition. Let's get some shadows in here so that it looks darker. So now I'm going to take the darker aquamarine color and I'm going to dip my brush in the liquid so that it's nice and smooth. And I want to come down and see this line right here. I want to darken right along that. And I want to do that because I'm going to frame in this lighter area. And so by adding that dark contrasting streak, it can really emphasize the lighter blues in the wave. See how pretty that is, the contrast? It's absolutely stunning. And you can also take that same color and come in here and just add a little more depth. I'm just gonna go back and forth with my brush. Okay, I want some really pretty shadows in there. And so I'm just subtly adding those in. Now what do we do on this side of that dark line? Let me show you what that needs to look like. So on that side, I want you to take your paintbrush and dip it in multiple swatches of the lighter shades. So I have like 4 different colors on there. And then just take that brush sideways. You might need to dip it in the liquid again. And just paint right along here. And then I'm going to say get white, get your titanium white, and streak that in there as well. And look how pretty that's looking. Okay, and then you can pull that lighter shade into the dark slightly. And then you can also take that dark shade and pull a couple of streaks out of it. So I'm just taking my paintbrush and pulling that color outward, just so that it isn't a perfect line. And then I'm blending with my brush just to soften. I'm touching lightly. I don't want to put too much pressure in that area. So notice how we have the dark and the light, dark light, dark light. It's that transition from those shades that gets that reflection, and also it gives it that 3-dimensional feel. And so as you continue doing that, notice how you have these lines. Each of these lines can represent a dark streak, if that helps you. And also I'm going to be adding some white in here for foam, and then we can also work in this area, but I'm going to put it on time lapse. I'm going to do much of what I've done up in here, but just watch and follow along so that you can see how I do this process in this area. And I will continue to show you how to work into this area where it's a lot more shaded and darker. I did all this area here and started to frame in with the dark shade over to the right. And one other suggestion I want to make is you can take a smaller brush. This is an Ebony Splendor by Bright Creative Mark, and it's a number 6 in size, and it's just a square brush. And I'm just going to take this and I'm going to come up here and just gently soften, just to blend it in and make it look a little more realistic. So that's one way that you can do that, is just take a smaller brush and just go in and just soften some of those areas that might look a little choppy from when we were working quickly. It's good to just go in and blend that together. And also, if you take a darker color, you can go in and add a little more depth to what you've already done. So I'm just going back and forth between a light shade and a dark shade, and again working the colors into each other just to get a really nice blended look. And you can take time. I'm not going to sit here and do all of it right this minute, but as you're working on your painting, and you know, if you pause the tutorial and you just want to go through and just soften edges, you can do that. And then we can continue working over to the left and then the right as soon as we're done with that. With water, you want to be very careful. You can't have it looking too rigid and you can't have it looking too soft. You have to find the happy medium. So on the left side, let me show you how to mix some of those colors. With my paints, I'm adding burnt sienna and then also burnt umber. We need to have some brown and red tones in the water to make it look even more realistic. And so I'm going to work that into my darker shades. So I had to get some more color. So if you look back to the beginning where we had the darker shades, I just refilled all of those. And it's my turquoise, it's my ultramarine blue, my cobalt blue. And I want you to take those, and you don't have to necessarily do them in perfect order, but I do want you to blend multiple shades of those colors and add a hint of the burnt umber and the burnt sienna in them. And you will find that it gives it a lot more depth as you start applying that on your canvas. It makes the water look more natural. If you just stick with blues, you might not have that natural effect that you want. So make sure you just take those two colors and you work them in. You can also do a variation where you add white. And so I'm going to come over here and darken this swatch. I'm going to add both the burnt umber and the burnt sienna, but I'm going to wipe my palette knife and add titanium white. And if you look closely, you can see that brown inside of there. And if you want to add a little more, you can. But again, it makes it reflect the natural colors that water would reflect anyway. If there's any surroundings around that water, it will reflect those colors. By adding all the dark in this area, it's going to make this look so much better. So you do need a bigger paintbrush. So I want you to take that giant one that we have, the 2-inch Fine Touch, and definitely dip it in your liquid. And then I want you to take a combination of your dark colors that you mixed. So I have like 4 different colors here. And I just want you to take your paintbrush and go to town. But you're going to work in the same direction as the wave. Just follow that curve as you go around. And this is how we're going to get this done a lot faster, by working big. I think if you work tiny the entire time, it gets a little frustrating. So just work really big. One thing I want you to do as you're working, we are going to take some of those lighter colors that we applied, and again, just cover your brush with all of those light colors, and you're going to work those into the dark. Okay, because they do exist over in the shadows, not as heavily as they do here, but you want to see that subtlety as you begin to incorporate the dark on the left side. Can you see how that's really coming together? You have the framing of the dark shade around the lighter colors. It's really pretty, and it makes this stand out. But we want to do a little more dark in here. So again, dip your brush in multiple shades so you get a variety of colors, and then just come down in here and keep swooping around. Keep that liquid handy. You'll definitely need it. It's okay if it drips, just blend it in. And once this dark dries, then we can go back over with white. We are going to do some really pretty white and silver highlights over here to make the water look reflective. There's no way we can do that right now where the paint is so wet. So we will have to let that dry for a couple of days and then come back over the top. But it's important that you have a dark base before you do that. And notice how I dip my brush in Ivory Black because I want to get some darker shadows in here. So you have the blue, and then you can have the black as well. And as it comes over here on this side, that's when you will start to begin adding the aquas. So we're really, really dark in the left, and then as we come closer to the right, we will begin adding the greens and the blues, the lighter greens and blues. Okay, so now I'm going to dip my brush into liquid, and I dip my brush in all of the blue and green shades, and now I'm going to pull them up into the dark. See how that's coming together? You now have this framed in to actually look like a real wave. And right now I'm dipping my brush in the burnt umber and the sienna brown again. I want to get a little more brown in this water back in here. And I'm also going to dip my brush in the blues and just work those colors in subtly. I even want to pull around and get that dark shade over in here. I want it to come crashing down onto this area. Okay, and anytime it gets dry and you can hear a lot of stroking, that means you need liquid. So see how it suddenly got quieter? All I did was add liquid. Okay, and this is when it gets so relaxing. I love working big with my paintbrush. I think it's so nice just to stroke back and forth and really feel it. And if you feel it, if you feel like you're getting into it and you're having fun and it's starting to look good, that's when art really comes to life and becomes meaningful to you. Okay, so now I'm taking blue again from the lighter swatches that we mixed, and I'm incorporating that. And then I want to get lighter. Okay, down in here, this is where you're going to get really choppy. Just take that paintbrush and Just work in multiple lines. I turned my paintbrush to the side, so I'm just using that edge. And stand back again. Can you see the tunnel it's creating? Look at that stunning tunnel. The dark going into the light just pulls your eye into this area over here. It is so beautiful. I want more aqua up in here, so I got some more aqua on my paintbrush. And I'm going to incorporate that in this area. And you don't want too much, just enough that it's there, but I'm going to get some more dark paint and fill in that white area. And I want you to know too that my paint palette is getting incredibly messy because I'm actually taking this brush and just dipping it in multiple colors at the same time. That's okay to do. Don't be afraid to do that. And I want more aquamarine, so I'm going back to my paint palette, pulling the lighter colors, and I want them to be right here. You can take your brush and do some fine lines over here too. I'm barely using this side, like the very edge of my paintbrush to get that texture and just stroking quickly. Okay, this area looks really, really good. So now that we have done this darker area, let's come over here and add our light colors again, because if you have the dark and then the light, it is so beautiful, as you can see. I'm going really light here with these shades, and I did clean off my brush again because it got really dark with the dark colors. So now it's a fresh brush, and I'm gonna go in and incorporate all of these really light colors. And you want to bounce back and forth between the greens and the blues so that you have that beautiful contrast. And they do blend beautifully together, the greens and the blues. So the more you go back and forth, the better result you'll get. Okay, and just pull those streaks up into the dark. And don't be afraid to get really light and do a couple that are super bright like that. Make sure you have that liquid on your brush. It helps a lot. And use that very edge to get those nice straight lines. You don't want to turn your brush this way as you're working. Okay, and I'm going to get more white on my brush. I want to see more white in my water. Okay, and again, if you want to get those short strokes to get that texture, you can. You can do short strokes or long strokes depending on how choppy you want that water to look as it's going up into the curl. I'm going right up against that dark right here, and you want to pull it down into your color slightly. And add a little more white right here. And at this point, I'm going to get really dark right here. I'm going to take one of my dark shades that I did with the brown, the Sienna brown and the burnt umber, and I'm going to apply that right along here. Need to get a little bit darker. That contrast is so important. I can't express that enough. You have to have your lights and darks close together. Okay, I'm going to mix some of that Alizarin Crimson in there as well to get it darker. And then you can take that same shade that's still on your brush, the dark, and you can incorporate some of that over in here. So I'm just taking my brush, I'm doing a few lines here and there. And if you want, you can even take your smaller brushes and do the same thing. And then take that same light brush and come over on this side and add more of that aqua color right along here against that dark blue. You can even take some white right along here and spread that across. And then add some darker streaks in here as well. With each little ripple in the water, there's going to be a shadow, and so we want to emphasize those ripples along here. That I really want the reflection up in here to stand out more, and so I'm taking my aqua colors, my light aqua colors, and I'm going to go in and just really bring out those highlights. Look how pretty that is. It'll make your water glisten and look more realistic, more shimmery. And see how beautiful that light green is? Can you see the water coming to life because of all that color we're adding? And then do the same thing on the other side, but then I want you to add the darker streaks. Come over to the left and add some black right along there, and then come over in here and again just keep adding those subtle shadows on this side as well. I love this painting. I'm having so much fun doing this. See, water isn't as hard as you think it is. If you just learn how to apply the colors properly and to add the right texture in the right places, and if you know how to do the contrasting colors next to each other, all of these elements come together to create a reflective, beautiful wave. So I stood back and I noticed that this area could use a little more blending. So come up in here if you need to and just blend this area together. I like this filbert brush because it's rounded and it's just really good to just do fine detail and fine blending. I am using this one frequently with this project. Up in this area, I want you to add more green. And you can add a hint of the aqua colors too. And here's something cool. Remember how we worked on some of the texture up here for the foam? That texture now can be really useful because it's dry, and when we paint the blue over it, it gives it this really cool effect. So I'm just taking my light aqua colors and applying them to the foam up in here. And then I'll take white and I'll fill that in some more. I'm leaving the color on my filbert brush, and I'm going to take some pure white and just go in and start blending. I'm going to put this on time lapse to speed things up, but just add more white and then blend those new colors into that white. You can use your filbert brush or you can use a bigger brush. On this side, I want you to focus on whites. We need to get some really bright, reflective whites that can have a little bit of blue. So just take your paintbrush and apply white. And then as you pull the color into it, you'll get a really nice blend. Make sure you use your liquid. Up here you want to get blues and greens blended in with that dark shade. So just take a few colors from your blue and green paint swatches and blend that in. There's actually a lot of green in this area that I want to incorporate. So go heavy on the green. So in this area over here, this is where we need to add dark shadows. So we're going to have some really dark streaks. I want you to take that filbert brush, dip it in your dark shades, and you're going to take that brush and just run those dark colors across here. I'm going to put it on time lapse while I do that, and then just follow along with me. I've allowed my painting to dry for a couple of days, and now I want to go in and really emphasize this area and make it more reflective And so to do that, I want you to take your liquid and dip your brush in it. And then I want you to take Ivory Black and paint with your flat brush. So this is the Ebony Splendor number 8 Bright Creative Mark brush. And I like that it's squared on top so that you can do straight lines. But we are going to really darken this upper line right here, because this is where all the sea foam is from the wave. And so there will be a really dark shadow just underneath that. So you just paint right along there. And then just under that, I want you to take one of your medium blues. And this one has some green mixed into it. Just look at your paint palette at the colors that we mixed. Find a darker turquoise shade and use that one. You are going to take white, so titanium white, and with that same brush, we're going to come in here and do some back and forth strokes like this, and do it in 2 different spots. And then streak them together once you come out here. And then you also want that to blend. And so I'm going to take a light blue that we blended and just gently stroke back and forth. And you want to weave it into the color that we painted a couple of days ago. You can also take a lighter turquoise color and just right along the sides of that white, do a couple of strokes like this, just to help it blend a little more. And then you take your fan brush, and this is where the magic happens. Look how that fan brush, just by gently feathering back and forth over what I just painted, it completely softened it. And now you have a reflection. And so that's how you get beautiful reflection in water. And so watch as I work along here. I'm going to put it on time lapse, but I'm going to use that same technique. And then one other thing that's crucial with the water that we're painting, there is a huge contrast between the white in this area and the dark. Find your dark blue mixed with your ivory black and take that swatch, and we really need to get those distinct dark shadows in here to help the water look extra reflective. Make sure you have liquid on that brush. Keep it really nice and fluid as you paint. You can even do different shapes as you merge those lines together. See how I branched off of that one? And that gives you ripples in the water. And now you can see that strong contrast. You can also take a dark blue. So this one has ultramarine blue in it and some ivory black. It's slightly lighter than the last shade, but I'm going to do some of that shade in here as well. And then you may want to pull some color out from this shadow. And so you can take a dark shade and come out into the light like that. And then just tie it in with the shadow up in here. And then have it fade. And I would do a couple of strokes up in here. And whenever you fade, just take a lighter shade and just continue that line until it disappears. Like that. You can also go up underneath it to lighten it up a little. now I have a turquoise color. I'm going to come in and just add a few more ripples. You don't need to get carried away. You can even add that lighter aqua blue that we mixed. See how much prettier that is than down here? So I'm going to put it on time lapse, watch how I enhance all of this, and follow along. Next, we need to add the highlights in this area, and then we can start the foam over in here. So I want you to take one of the grays that you mixed. We have a blue gray, we have a light gray. All of them are relatively light. And you just take that square brush, and I want you to go in and just add some dashes here and there. But don't have them all be the same size. You want some to be a little bit longer than others. You can also use a light blue, just anything in the gray and light blue category. But basically what this does is it adds a shimmer to your water so that it doesn't look flat. And see how I'm just quickly stroking and doing little slashes here and there of color. And then in some areas you can even make them larger, like I just did right there. You can do longer lines. Just make sure that they follow the flow of the wave. You don't want to go sideways and have it be going perpendicular to the actual wave. Okay, and in some places you want to do clumps, like that. And then the other thing you can add along with that, if you have an area that has a large clump, you can take your dark blue that's mixed with the ivory black, and you can actually go in and add a really dark shadow. You might have to go with ivory black if the blue isn't quite dark enough. You can go in and really deepen an area. That will also add to the reflection by having areas of dark contrasted with areas of light. And then it also doesn't hurt to take a darker turquoise green, and you can go in and actually add highlights back in the dark area of the wave. And don't get carried away. We're just doing this to add some color. So I'm going to put this on time lapse and just watch as I continue doing this. Up here will be a little bit different, a little more scattered. I want you to take your paintbrush up here and you'll do kind of a peppered pattern where you turn your brush sideways on the corner, and you're just going to do quick strokes like this. So you can do a bold line like that and then pepper around it. So I don't know if that terminology helps, but I know that when I make up stuff like that, it helps me when I'm painting. Okay, so just watch as I do this area and then down here with time lapse and follow along. grab your filbert brush and I want you to dip your brush into the deep ultramarine and cobalt blue shade that we have. And I want you to paint that right along here. And with that, you're going to be adding some purple. So just move back and forth between the two colors. And then as you come over here, I want you to have it switch to a light blue. And then over here, it's going to be more of an aquamarine color. And now you take white, so take your titanium white, and you're going to add quite a bit of that white up above. I also want you to mix some light aquamarine blue in here, and not heavily. This is the area where the wave crashes down, and so you're going to have a lot of motion in here. And so we have to show that motion with our color and our texture. So down in here, you're going to pull whatever color is over in this area, pull it up into here, into the white. Let's blend these right here. So we have that purple, and take some aquamarine blue, mix that in there. You can do light aquamarine and dark aquamarine. Just get the two colors together. And come up steep over in this area. And then up here, this wave is crashing down in this area. So I'm going to take that aquamarine and bring that color down into here. That cobalt teal is the combination that I love the most. It's when you mix that cobalt teal with your permanent green light, and you mix white, titanium white with that, and you get the perfect shade for the water. It's really, really pretty. Okay, so we're coming right down into the foam right here. And just connect that with the curl right here. Just want it to all connect together so that it's one fluid motion. Now once you have that, let's fill all of this up with the titanium white. So this is where you take your big brush and you are going to scoop up a huge chunk of white. And it's okay if it has some blue mixed in there. And then you're going to spread that around in here. And it's okay if you come into this area that you've already painted and add some wispy motions with your brush, because again, this is where all the action is taking place with that wave crashing down. So we need to show that action. So you can kind of go to town and go crazy. Okay, so notice how I'm lightly brushing upward with my brush and kind of pulling the foam back up into the wave. And can you see it starting to come together where it's now looking realistic? That's what we were aiming for. Take that white and also just turn your brush like this, kind of in a C shape, and get some motion back in here. It's nice to have those highlights. It really adds to the wave. You can even pull some of that white up into here. And then up in here, you're going to blend that white and green together. And I want a strong contrast of white right along here. I want to shape that wave tip so that it stands out better. See that? That just adds to the curl. And then in here, let's turn our brush and the paint up and around in that C pattern again. And then take that filbert brush and just lightly add some color. Not very much, but just enough that it's in there and it gives it some dimension. And then down here, we also want to pull the white and the colored areas together. So again, I'm doing that C pattern. And then up in here, we need to add more white. So let's take that white and apply aggressively. And we're going to pull the white down as you go. You might need to wipe off your brush a couple of times. You want that white to be really, really strong in this area. We're even going to have a spot where it sprays upward. We can blend that in here in a second. But that just shows the power and the intensity of the wave crashing down. Watch as I continue to blend and just follow along and do the same thing. Take your light turquoise, dip your brush in liquid, and again use the round brush, and take the lighter turquoise, and I want you to paint right up above here. We are going to pull this color down into the white because this wave carries all the way around here, and so what you're seeing is the top of the water. So we want to be sure to get that aquamarine color in there. And just have that blue blend in with the background. You can see how it fades right into the blue that we had painted before for the sky. Next, I want you to take the white. I suggest that you clean your brush off so that the white is as pure as it can be. And then dip your brush in the liquid. And then be generous with the amount you use of the white. We want a lot of texture in this area. And so you're just going to take that white and spread it all the way across. Now that this area is totally covered with the titanium white, now we can add the shadows within the mist right here. And so I want you to get the aquamarine again, and it's the lighter aquamarine. And I want you to add a shadow right in here. And we're actually going to do it in a few places. So let's add another over here. And then again down in here. And then with that, I also want you to take your gray. So remember how we mixed a couple of grays? We have a light blue gray and we have a light regular gray. And you're just going to go in and add just a few shadows in these areas. And at first it will look weird, but once we start blending, you'll start to see how it's all coming together. I also want you to pull the aqua shade down into the mist down here. And you won't do it everywhere, just in a couple of spots. But at the top, you need to blend the white into the aquamarine. You can also take the titanium white and paint upward, so you can have it come up into the light blue of the sky in some areas. You don't want to do it everywhere, but in a couple of spots you can. Right in the middle of that, you want to brighten the white. So you want the edges to be soft and then the middle to be bold and white. And then you can take your brush and start to blend in the sides. So you just pull the white and the blue together. And I use really fast strokes when I'm working. That seems to get the paint to blend better. So it's almost like coloring with a crayon. And then if you wipe your brush off in between, that's helpful too, because sometimes you can get excess paint on your brush and then it's hard to get that off unless it's wiped off. You don't want your paint to build up on your brush too much. So again, I'm just pulling that aqua color down into the white and then softening the sides. And then come over, and you can leave that aqua on your brush and then come over to the gray and pull that into the white. And really it's going to look like clouds. So if you've done clouds, it's a similar process to that. And then this is when the fan brush is awesome. So you want to take your fan brush and do that X pattern that I taught you how to do. And a fan brush just softens everything so that it looks more natural. You don't see as many paint strokes. You still have a lot of texture in the painting, but you don't see the individual strokes. You just see a softness. How pretty that is. Now once we've done that, we can still enhance the shadows a little more, and that's exactly what I'm wanting to do. And so now you can take a deeper aquamarine, and I'm going to take it and add it to the color from yesterday. I just want to emphasize the water back behind the spray, so that we can see almost a window into the mist to where the water is. And take that lighter aquamarine and just soften the edges. And see how pretty that flow is? You can add other shadows if you want to intensify it even more. Just use your freedom and do what you want to do. Then we'll add a few more details over in here, and then this will be wrapped up. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed my video. Be sure to check out my website at andreakirkart.com. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel to stay informed on upcoming videos. We'll see you next time.